All right. Um, hey, Rich, how you doing today?
How you doing, Vinay?
I'm doing good. Hey, welcome everyone. We're starting another podcast, another episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast today, and we've got a really interesting discussion ahead of us. I think there's a lot of stuff I'm probably going to learn throughout the course of this. But I wanted to kind of start first with a little bit about what is the whole Business Blind Spots podcast. What is it all about? For me, I'll tell you from a personal point of view. I have banged into walls. I've gotten smacked in the face with stuff I could have seen, but I never did see. I just never saw it coming, and I felt like an idiot. Well, those were my blind spots. And over time, I just started getting a little smarter and realizing, well, instead of having these blind spots, maybe I should start figuring out what these blind spots are. And I started finding these blind spots through others. They started saying, hey, Vinay, this is what's going to happen next. Huh. And I stopped getting smacked in the face more often. And what I really ended up realizing after all that is this idea that your blind spots in your company are things that you can see already. You just got to be able to look at the data that starts to show you that. And the conversation we're going to have today is a little bit about that and how you can start to see some of those blind spots. We've got some really exciting guests. We've got executive coaches coming up next week. We've got people talking about sales and how to build better sales organizations, all blind spots that we all have. So I'd encourage you to tune in for those future events. But today we've got Rich Camacho from Blue Recruit. Rich, how's the day going for you so far?
Not bad. It's a little wet outside, but when you were saying that, I gotta say, I think my biggest blind spot in life ever was I think my junior year of college. I was on the Army lacrosse team. I was about to shoot a goal, and I did not see two massive defenders coming in different directions. 3.5 minutes later, I woke up still on the field. I did not score the goal.
Well, first of all,
Different kind of a blind spot, but still, it'll get you.
I didn't know you played lacrosse. I did too, and I've gotten my clock cleaned a couple of times from someone just outside of the helmet.
I had no idea who the president of the United States was at the time for about the rest of the day.
Well, I'm excited about this topic because look, the way I tell people is we're all in the people business, and that's the end of the story. It doesn't matter whether you're in plumbing, electrical, tech, or whatever. We're all in the people business because people are who buy.
Yep.
So getting good people and then retaining good people are the two biggest things I think any company can excel at. And the reason I'm excited is about the opportunity to talk to you about some of the things that you found in your journey in bringing the right people on board. So tell me, maybe let's start. Tell me a little more about the journey. I mean, I read your bio and kind of how you were in the Army and kind of your whole journey there. I'd love to hear it from you in your own words, kind of how that journey started.
Yeah. So after the military, I was flying Black Hawk helicopters for a while. I then got out and I was working for a talent agency that specified in helping veterans that were leaving the service enter corporate America. And it was awesome because it made for a real natural transition for me. Learned how to do sales. What I kept running into was, let's take a construction company for example. Construction company is like, hey, thanks so much for helping us get this project manager. We also need 20 welders. Can you help us out? And I had no idea where to find folks like that. So one thing led to another. Eventually, my father-in-law, who's been an auto body painter his whole life, he called me up and he's like, Rich, help me. I don't know what I did wrong. And he's like, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I'm trying to hire an auto body painter for one of my shops. And I just, I went to Indeed, wrote a job post, and I just got 80 resumes for house painters. He's like, what did I do wrong? And I was like, I got the thing. I was like, well, you did nothing wrong. You Indeed ran a keyword search and it sent you everybody with painter and $20 an hour in the West Palm Beach area. And that's where, our journey with Blue Recruit started. And it all kind of comes back to data, because ultimately that's what came and bit Joe was bad data.
Yeah. And we've got a couple people have chimed in here. David Dickey from says, thank you for your service from a fellow vet, Rich. David's good people, and maybe I need to connect the two of you guys afterwards. I think there's probably a good conversation there. And Matthew Armstrong, thanks. Hey, yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Good to see you, Matt. And throughout the course of this, I encourage anyone who who's listening in, please chime in, ask questions. I'm sure Rich would love to kind of yield some insights in the way he sees it. So let's talk about that scenario there. Got lots of resumes in. Doing a keyword search. I mean, I feel like Monster kind of a long time ago, that's kind of where they started. That's not enough these days, right? Just the keyword search. It's more than that, right?
It really is. Like, I think most, especially right now with COVID, with the incredible unemployment that it brought on, thankfully, we're slowly chugging our way out of that. But right now, the average company, they're getting over 250 resumes per open job. So it's not hard to put a job out there and get a whole bunch of applicants, but that doesn't help anybody. Like, one of my favorite sales techniques is I go on to Indeed and I apply for a job at Duke Hospital as a general surgeon. I'm sorry, Duke, you're actually paying about $1.50 every time I do this, but it's your fault. Like, I should not be like doing surgery on anybody, but it just shows that if we don't have good ways to manage data, just getting a bunch of it doesn't help anybody. And every business, regardless of what you're in, whether you're in talent or you're building widgets, you need a way to not just gather data, but then do something productive with it.
So all right. So let's say you're Duke in this case. You've put this job rec out there for a general surgeon, right? And you've got Rich Camacho, who just read general surgery for dummies.
By the way, they've never called me back for an interview.
I think that's a good thing, right? So you've just read general surgery for dummies. You applied for this. You're using all the keywords, right? So you kind of fit into the search. How does Duke do a better job of sifting through all that? I mean, I'll tell you, keywords is what I've been trained to do. It's like the 3,000-mile oil change from Jiffy Lube. That's what I know. So how do you take it to that next level as the organization that wants to find people?
Yeah. So what we did, and it went back to Joe, my father-in-law. It was, okay, auto body painter and house painter, like both roles that require certain skill sets, certain experiences, even in certain situations, certain certifications. So why don't we focus on those things to start with? So what we did at Blue Recruit was, and this took months, for every single channel or industry that we help our clients with, we actually identified every certification, every license, every skill set, every experience that someone can possibly have for one of those roles. So we actually completely got rid of resumes, completely got rid of job posts, and job seekers go onto our site. Rather than spending an average of 6 to 8 hours to write a resume, they can create a Blue Recruit profile highlighting their particular skill sets in less than 5 minutes. And then on the flip side, employers, rather than writing job posts and again, waiting for those keyword resumes, they say, hey, we're looking for A, B, and C in this location. We're paying this much money. And because the data is clean, it then makes a perfect match. It says, hey, contact these 10 people. You can connect to them right here.
So I've got Stephen Johnson on here, says the challenge is getting good data and then knowing how to use it. And I think that's part of what you're saying, right?
Yep.
Instead of them going through this somewhat of the circuitous route of just writing a resume, which really kind of doesn't separate the wheat from the chaff anyway, get them to just directly match skill sets. But all right, so I'm going to push back a little bit here, right? Here's the problem with data sometimes is you just say, check these boxes and that's the only measuring stick, but that's still not the whole story. Mm-hmm. Does that have that adverse effect where you're just saying, hey, if you don't fit this measuring stick, I don't even want to talk to you?
You're absolutely right. And oftentimes, one problem that I have is when you're looking at, say, a job description, and you look at, hey, these 10 skill sets are for the ideal candidate. I seriously doubt 99% of the population out there is ever going to hit all 10 of those. And you don't want to not bring in a great person because they have 7, 8, maybe 9 of them. I think all of us at some point have come across good to great. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best parts in good to great is if you're a great person, I'm going to find a seat for you on the bus. We're not going to say you're going to go into this job, but you're a fantastic person, fantastic talent. We're going to find a seat for you on the bus. So what we did was, yeah, you can go ahead and rank everybody by how much of a perfect fit you are to those criterias, but we're still going to show you additional ones. We're going to highlight what they're lacking, but we highly recommend that this person is still a good contingent. And every single, I think, I haven't looked at the data in a while, but over 80% of jobs require on-the-job site training. And that's just the fact it's never going to go away. I think it would be really bad if it didn't go away.
So
if you're in a role where you're not consistently learning.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and when it's funny, people say I'm a constant learner. Well, for me, I feel like that statement's gotten a little old. There's no job that I've ever been part of where you weren't constantly learning, right? And if anything, it's almost unlearning the stuff that you used to know that is no longer relevant, and you learning the new stuff that you're rolling into, right? Joseph,
for me is when my team lets me code. Talk about me learning and potentially breaking everything.
Yeah, that's funny with my team too. The more I get out of the day to day, the better things actually run. Joseph, you said right. What did you say right to? I would love to hear what you gave us a check mark for. And some of the other folks that are listening in, thanks for listening. I'd love to understand more about how you guys have seen the recruiting process, you've seen that has worked well for you and maybe not so well. Because lots of times it's not a binary process in my mind. There's some stuff that works right, some that doesn't, and I'd love to kind of get Rich's opinion on some of that stuff.
I think one of the most important things, and I made this error in the very beginning when we were first kind of throwing around the idea of what would eventually become Blue Recruit, and it was, hey, we're going to have all this awesome data. And when we get more data and we keep building more and more data, we're going to be able to do really cool things with it. That's wrong. Like, it doesn't matter what size of a company you are, the data you have, there's still incredible uses for it. And I remember when we were in the extreme MVP phase, as I like to call it, really just an idea. We had a landing page, and behind that landing page was an Excel spreadsheet and a whole bunch of notebooks. And we're just gaining information. And what myself and my other co-founders were doing was we were actually calling every single person that went to our landing pages looking for work. And we were actually talking to them on the phone and like, hey, what are you looking for? What are your experiences? What are your certifications? Because we wanted to make sure that when we eventually built the software, we're going to be collecting the right information. Now looking back, those spreadsheets, that data is probably invaluable because we wouldn't have gone to where we are now had we not done those steps. And I think it's too easy to always think like down the road, I'm going to do something with this data. Like, no, the stuff you have right now is so valuable, and don't not collect data right now because you haven't figured out a way to use it. Like, the more you can collect early, you'll figure something out down the road.
Yeah, there's a thread I want to pull on there, and Joseph has been putting some more comments in here, which I appreciate. He says, "Must find the best person for you. Jobs don't throw away people because all the boxes are not checked." And you're right. I mean, it's all about finding the potential in the people just as much as it is the capacity. If they have the capacity and the desire to do it, you can get them there. You can train them the skills, right? You got to get them in the door and find the right attitude, right?
Yep.
But so I appreciate you saying that, Joseph. One thing that I wanted to pull on as a thread, though, is this idea of you started very early on with a bunch of notebooks and manual phone calls. So for us, but what you do as a company is constantly call people. I'm in a service company, and I'm servicing my existing customers, and I got to hire some new people. I don't have time to do notebooks. How is that going to help me right now? Distill that for me a little bit. And how does that, because you're talking about, let's start with just where you are right now and how that starts to improve things. How does that improve? What does that journey look like?
Yeah. So had we stayed notebooks, I mean, it's absolutely impossible to ever grow, to ever scale doing that. And, before we do that, I'll back up one thing. One really interesting thing that we did collect during those initial very manual process of data collection was we found out, our model doesn't work for all jobs. That surgeon role, do not use Blue Recruit to fill the surgeon role. Don't use Blue Recruit to hire your next attorney. But blue collar skilled trades jobs, on average require 4 times more hard skills than the average white collar role. And that's where at the end of the day, like I can't, regardless of how much you train me on site, I can't go to a shipyard in Maine and repair damage to a naval vessel. It doesn't matter because I'm probably going to end up burning my arm off before I ever get enough training to do that. So to even get yourself in the door to start that role, there are certain hard skills you have to have. And that's where Blue Recruit comes in. And that's where we make it so much easier for our clients to identify those folks and then build them up once they're on site, which every job should do. And if your company's not doing that, you're going to fail.
Okay, so that's starting to make more sense here. I mean, we're not talking about Blue Recruit as a solution for everyone. There's a niche. I mean, it's a pretty good sized niche, right? But there's a niche, and that's an interesting statistic that 4 times more hard skills than someone else. And I think what's kind of appearing to me as you're saying that is, if you're in one of these service type companies that needs to hire one of these skills, you already probably know that, but being able to kind of get them to self-select themselves walking in the door because either you have these skills or you don't.
No.
It just kind of becomes it separates the wheat from the chaff very early on is what I'm hearing.
Yep. Like I can change the oil on my car. I can't turn over the engine. And it's probably going to take a lot of schooling for me to ever get to that point.
So,
go ahead.
So typical customers that you go into, I mean, who are typical customers for you or partners? Yeah. Who are the customers for you usually? It's not Duke.
Duke Energy, yes. But yes, not actually Duke Hospital, yes. Because, let's think about COVID right now. Every single person coming into the emergency room, that's completely, people still break their ankles, right? Going out for runs. Someone comes into the emergency room with a broken ankle. Last thing you want is for that person to leave the emergency room with a cast and COVID. So guess what? Every single company now has to find more janitorial staff, more cleaning service specialists. Duke Hospital, hey, these massive hospitals, those electrical systems, those HVAC units, all of those systems need to be maintained. I mean, I'm talking to Mr. Maintainer. So it really is amazing how even companies that you would never think have that skilled labor component, at the end of the day, I'm sitting in this beautiful office building of ours and we need the lights to turn on. And there's always contractors somewhere in the building working on it.
So we had a comment here that flashed up on screen let me bring that back up. David Dickey said, I use several ways to recruit and use LinkedIn Recruiter. My data showed that compared to other methods, the data was clear, it was not effective, and helped make the decisions to use the methods that worked the best for my recruiting firm. So I think what I'm distilling here, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, what I think I'm hearing from you is that information that was coming into you wasn't necessarily effective, though, in trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. I think that's the way I'm reading this. And I think that's a little bit of what you're saying too, Rich. Is that the way you're reading it as well? And make sure I'm getting that right, David.
Yeah, I will say, in the beginning, people used to think, oh, so are you like a LinkedIn for blue collar workers? Absolutely not. And frankly, if anyone out there was trying to create a startup that's going to challenge Microsoft, I'd be like, you might want to rethink that. They've got a couple bucks they can throw behind everything. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. I use it every single day. A lot of our clients, that's how we communicate. However, it wasn't designed for the job seekers that we're servicing. That HVAC tech. Yes, you can an HVAC technician can create a profile, but chances are they're not going to be right now. They're out there fixing that unit. They're probably not using the desktop like I think a lot of people use on LinkedIn. They're not using the what's that, like when you the first homepage. So it's just a different avenue of the economy and a different persona. So yeah, that's where we've just found our niche. And I think doing those initial interviews and gaining that data allowed us to say, we're not a recruiting service for everyone, and nobody should be. Just like developers, for anyone out there that's in tech, someone tells you, hey, I'm a full stack developer. You're probably better at back end or front end somewhere. No one does it all.
So David chimed in here and said, using the data, it showed that LinkedIn Recruiter platform didn't work for me. And I think I'm hearing commonality in what you all are saying. Kind of going back to that stat, 4 times more hard skills. Yeah, I don't know that LinkedIn asks you about those hard skills at all. So it's not sort of the target demographic that they're
Mhm.
looking for on LinkedIn. Um, which is I never stratified it that way myself, and actually now that you say it, and both of you say that, it makes actually a heck of a lot of sense. Um, Joseph had chimed in here, said even base skills can be built on, but they must be willing to learn and grow. Let's dig into that for a second, because I think that's an interesting thread. There's this whole thing out there called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it talks about this idea of GWC, get it, want it, capability to do it. You want to be able to have someone who's hungry. You want to have somebody who's got the capability, right? But then they also got to, they've got to have the desire to get there. How do you sift? I mean, look, I feel like that's sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, is trying to get that person who's got the capacity and the desire to do that. By going through this checklist method where you're kind of filtering them out, does it get you closer to finding those really good people? Does it help in that regard?
I gotta say, earlier I was on a conversation with a fantastic construction company. They're actually here in the Southeast, and they had two very distinct hiring needs. One, they're looking for general laborers, because at the end of the day, hey, for that building to get up, we're going to need hundreds of people on site. And it's the understanding, like, you're willing to work, you have the desire, you've gone through the process of creating a profile, you're looking, that's enough to get you in the door. At the other end, it is not an easy task to become an industrial electrician. Knocking out an apprenticeship, a journeyman, having a laundry list of certifications, that in itself also shows like this person is dedicated to their career. Because I think a bad misnomer from kind of a lot of white collar folks that I've run into when we discuss this is oftentimes, and it's frankly insulting, they don't often think that blue collar tradespeople see it as a career. And it is. Like, you can make a fantastic living, not just economically, but intrinsically. And seeing someone's career progression through those stats shows that desire to constantly learn, just like what we've been talking about.
So it's interesting. I mean, call business blind spots exposed. Lots of times, so I'm getting challenged a little bit here in the way I think. Look, I've always worked in technology myself, and your career progression is kind of through that role and that rank. It's not so much there's some certifications and things like that, but you can do that through on-the-job training, to your point, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're going to be an industrial electrician, yeah, that's no joke. You don't just read a book, Industrial Electricians for Dummies, and you get there, right?
I've been terrified at some of our client work sites. Like, you look at those things, like, I don't even want to get close to it.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, there are some dangerous environments if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Right? Yes. So it's interesting kind of you're saying this. I mean, I have never even looked at LinkedIn that way. You're right. It just doesn't make sense. And I think David's saying that he said other job boards work better, and so did regular searches on LinkedIn, instead of spending a lot of money on a platform like LinkedIn Recruiter. Joseph, you're saying no. What were you saying no to? I would love to find out what you were saying there. Because, but back to your point is those hard skills make all the difference. And if you can kind of watch that progression of those hard skills over time, you actually get their ability and their desire to go down that path, because it is a path. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I hadn't looked at that. So, all right. So let's kind of talk about some things that people can start to shift in their behavior today that will change the outcome of the people that bring in the door. I hear from trades companies all the time. I hear from field service companies all the time. I can't find good people. Where does that start? Why does it start that way? Is it just because they're getting 800 resumes, but they're getting quantity but no quality? Is that really the issue there? Is that it? Is that all that's play?
Well, I could talk, and we have as part of our welcome email, we have a really nice best practices, that we highly recommend our clients to follow. And there's some behavioral type stuff. Like, one thing that we have noticed, and this does relate back to data, is this took me a long time to get comfortable myself with, so I understand the resistance. Text messaging is okay to do in a professional setting now. And so many companies are losing out on great talent because, like on Blue Recruit, they'll connect with them, they start doing in-app messaging, sending text messages, and then it's, oh, I emailed you your job application and you never sent it back. That person actually doesn't have their email account on their phone, and they have no idea you ever did that, and you just lost somebody because you went through a channel that they're not using. Mm-hmm. So just like behavioral data in that. But I think one of the big things is the siloing of information. And that, again, it doesn't matter what size of an organization. I can't talk about how Fortune 50s or Fortune 100 companies do it. But even in our startup with 5 of us, I remember one time someone on our product team sent me over some information from my database. And I was like, what is this? Like, I'd never even seen it before. And she's like, oh, yeah, it's what I do for this. I'm like, there's 5 of us, and I didn't even know we were collecting this. And that just shows, like, it doesn't matter what size organization you have. At the end of the day, it comes down to communication and ensuring that in an efficient manner, that information is shared and everyone can see it.
So this is really interesting because I think just before we started, I talked about we did a kickoff for a customer, and in that kickoff, just kind of solicited what are your expectations for this kickoff call, and we got a couple of things from different parts of the organization. They said there's a little bit of a yellow, or I actually would say a red flag that popped up that nobody else had in the team had thought of before, and I think maybe that's a little bit of what I'm hearing here is this idea that when you're bringing people to the table, there probably needs to be a lot more internal communication to set proper expectations as to who we want to hire for that role, and getting all that stuff set up at the outset, as opposed to having someone sitting across the table from them doing an interview and saying, I don't know why we're hiring this person. They don't fit any of the requirements that we have because nobody ever bothered to ask them. So I think I'm hearing a little bit of internal coordination is probably a first way. Am I echoing that properly?
I completely agree with that. I mean, I know what we've done, ourselves internally, and I definitely think I saw some information a while back about small businesses, particularly that a bad small business hire you should not look at it as, okay, we lost X amount of money from the salary we paid them for the 12 months they were working here, but rather quadruple that. And to a small business, that's the actual cost that bad hire had on you, because you were losing out on client servicing, additional sales, what have you, the training required. In a small business, chances are maybe one of the owners is the one doing the training, and you're pulling even more away from the business. So that's why, making that good hire is even more important the smaller your organization is.
It goes beyond just sort of the plain economic or financial impact. It's really just the momentum for that organization because 10 people.
What's up, Jen?
Yeah. Hey, Jen. I saw that you chimed in as well. Good to see you. Joseph had typed in a comment here. Spraying a house is much different than wiring a house. So talk to me about that. You got different field service companies, different trades companies, right? They've got different sets of certifications. Does this work across the gamut? I mean, it's not. I think what I'm hearing from you, one size fits all, actually doesn't.
No, not at all. Just like my father-in-law Joe told me, the ability to paint a house is not the same, or the skill set to paint a house is not the same as the skill set to paint a car. And I think to a lot of us laymen, it's like, oh, painting's painting. Electrical work is electrical work. Well, it turns out there's high voltage, low voltage, medium voltage, residential, industrial, and too often outside of the skills, we're trying to solve a problem through the exact same process for parts of our economy that are so different, and skill sets that are so different. Like, I would not use Blue Recruit to hire the next salesperson at Blue Recruit, but I definitely would use Blue Recruit to hire a general contractor for my company.
David chimed in and says, not sure if I missed it, Rich, but what example is a way you use data to find that hard to find talent for your clients that really stands out in the marketplace? Rich, any thoughts there?
Yeah. Let me make sure I read that entirely.
Sure. So what example is a way you use data to find that hard to find talent? I guess the way I'm interpreting is there's certain certifications, some check boxes that are out there. Is there a way to use those check boxes as a way to be a magnet for talent that are kind of, the needle in the haystack? Can you, does that make sense, David?
Yeah, David, I think that's multi-channel. One, it's really good recruiting or really good marketing in order to build out that data pool. One, two, it's making sure and just today I was going through our list. I'm like, and I do self audits on ourselves, and I found out that we were lacking a key skill set within surveying for construction companies. And it's like, we don't have that. We're also failing because we're not even giving our job seekers the ability, because he or she might have that. And just consistently checking your own data, just like people are always wanting to clean data, get rid of the bad data. One of my sales guys was like, he's like, hey, Rich, can I go through our HubSpot and clean out some of these old sales? Yeah, absolutely. Like, you don't have to ask me to do that. Like, one, we're paying to store those people, and two, why even bother doing outreach to them? So I think, David, an important thing is to constantly check yourself and make sure that we're actually trying to collect the right data. Because someone in our database might actually have a skill set that one of our clients is looking for, but we failed to ask them for it. Okay.
So this is interesting because I don't see this as and I'm finding this more and more these days. It's not a destination; it's a journey, right? I mean, you're taking the first step to understand some of the requirements. Then the next time you say, well, that's not 100%. I think there's some things that you're leaving on the table here that I haven't characterized yet, but the next ask that. So it's constantly reinvesting in asking your clients what it is they really need and the boxes that they need, because they may have only given you 4 of the 6 that you really need. And maybe this touches on a little bit of what Joseph is saying, is that construction, I believe you have to have 8 of those boxes, but in another type, in the type his skill set, you can train them for some of those things, so it's not as important. So different skills have different roles, have different levels of checkbox. Does that make sense?
I got my first sales job. I'd never sold a thing in my life, but he's like, hey, you're a pretty charismatic guy. I can train you how to sell my product. I was like, cool. That wouldn't happen. Like, no one's gonna be like, hey, Rich, you're a pretty charismatic guy. Come take apart my transmission. That's not gonna happen. Well, I took it apart for you. Now go pay someone to put it back together.
Well, I will tell you, if I walk into Duke and I need general surgery and I see you there, I will reconsider my options. No offensive to you, of course. Just the fact that you told me you have no certifications there. So we talked about this idea of kind of this internal collaboration, trying to get everyone on the same page. Too often the times people aren't on the same page when they put that requirement out there for somebody. Trying to, if you are recruiting into one of these hard skill areas, kind of having some of those up front help vet people better, so they self-select themselves out of it, as opposed to maybe focusing just on the resume. Mm-hmm. What else? What are the other things that you're usually opening companies' eyes to in terms of maturing their think for the hiring process?
One really probably, like, I think every single business owner has this, like, there's a part of their business that's really special to them. What I love actually does not have to do with our clients, but rather our job seekers. And what we're currently doing is, we're gathering such phenomenal data. Just yesterday morning, not to call someone out or anything like that, but I just happened to have our database up, and I was watching job seekers enter the data, and I noticed somebody, and she lived in a pretty central part of Florida. She was looking for, and we asked people, where do you live? Where would you prefer to live? How far are you willing to commute? Are you willing to relocate, et cetera, et cetera? And this person was looking to work in a very rural part of the state and looking for a warehousing job, but at a salary that was just unattainable. No company is going to pay you that much per hour to do that job. And I'm sitting there, I was like, that person needs to be told that. And it's hurting her chances of ever getting a job because chances are she just doesn't know that that's not attainable with her current skill sets. Hey, she gets a job, learns new things, develops more skills. She might become that manufacturing manager one day, but right now, that's not an attainable goal. And so that's what we're working on right now is an AI capability that's going through that data that could then immediately let somebody know, hey, have you thought about this? And oh, by the way, here's some courses, some skill sets that you can attain right now to help you get there. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting. Being able to kind of have the system come in and say, hey, I've learned a couple of things that you've done in the past that might lead to a better outcome potentially, right? Or a better question to ask to kind of maybe see if you can vet them out or keep them in the pool. I'd heard from someone a little earlier about they've got some applicants that keep applying again and again and again to a role. What do you do with that stuff? What have you typically done when people keep applying and you're like, look, you're just not checking the boxes here? How do you deal with that?
So that's one of the things our clients love about us is that literally cannot happen because the clients are the ones reaching out to the job seekers when they identify someone that they want. That goes out the window. And I hate to say it, there's a lot of folks out there that do that, and it just creates more inefficiencies for that HR team, the manager, whoever it is that's actually doing the hiring. It's like, I'm sorry, but you're just not a fit. And that's just a reality sometimes. So we got rid of that problem by the way that our connections and interviews are done. But I remember seeing that all the time when I worked in traditional recruiting was, I'm sorry, you're just not a fit.
But now you've got sort of a measuring stick. You say, look, hey, this is a measuring stick here, and you don't rate on the scale.
And that's where I'm really excited is, okay, you're not there right now. You're right here. Hey, here's this training we can connect you with in order to improve. Let's get you in right here. Let's get you a salary. Let's get you a job. And over the next year, 18 months, 24 months, whatever it looks like, we'll get to where you want to be. Tell us what your goals are, and we can help you achieve those.
Pay is always such a
personal.
It's personal. It's just a squishy subject. I don't know a better word, right? What do I offer? Do I tell them up front what I'm looking for? That's what you believe.
You want to stop receiving 250 resumes, 230 of them, which are completely unqualified for. Just be upfront with it. I don't understand why and it doesn't matter what the job is. I don't understand why we're holding that back. It might prevent somebody from ever applying because oh, I can't take that kind of a paycheck. Someone might see me like, oh, I'm definitely not. Because one of the huge problems with job descriptions is, I don't know how many job roles are out there. And this is outside of my industry, but let's go with sales or tech, director, vice president. That definition can have a huge difference in pay. I mean, so just be upfront with it. And it's just going to make the process so much easier.
So that's interesting because, I haven't applied for a job in a while. I guess I've been lucky in that regard that most of them have come to me. But I know what I've started to hear a lot of people saying is when you go talk to a company about a role, you say, look, I can't tell you what your budget is. All I can tell you is whether it's an interesting role for me or not. You tell me what you can afford, and I'll tell you if that affording me is something I want. But then that actually shifts the conversation a little bit to, instead of someone saying, I want here, and they say here, and you're just a mismatch on that. Expectations up front, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've never understood why it has to be this huge secret. And I think that adds to, you said to me, pay is squishy. And I think it's in a lot of ways because society, I can't say that word. We've made it even more like this, unspeakable term out there. And then let's look at and diversity inclusion efforts that are going on across the country. You know what's one of the best ways to make it even across the board? Put your salaries out there. Let people know what they're going out for. And when we just keep things hidden, it hurts that diversity, that inclusion even more.
It just so I mean, in what I like about this is all of a sudden you're just taking that stuff off the table altogether, right? I told you what it is. You applied for the job because I told you it's 5.
What do you want me to do with it?
So I mean, but that's a little different than at least when I was growing up. You walk into a room and you say, well, you're sitting there as a candidate. You've gone through 3 interviews. Like, all right, I'm sick and tired of these interviews. I don't even know if it's worth my time or not. You're just taking that off the table. They know it's worth their time. They know that they're going to pursue it. But that's just a shift in mentality. I mean, that's a hard shift for people to make, but it just takes a lot of risk off the table. I mean, when you do sales, one of the first things that you do is you start asking, so what are the challenges that you have right now? By taking those off the table, it's just in the past now, you've gotten past those emotions. You're now just getting down to brass tacks. I think that's what I'm hearing from you.
I think back to that Office episode where Michael's trying to get a raise, and then he's like, well, just write down the salary that you want on the paper and then pass it across. Why can't I just tell you? Well, that's how they do it in the movies. Like, we're just making it more of a problem than it has to be.
So you guys go through, put these say, hey, I need you to have these. I need you to hit these check marks in the industry that you're working in. There's hard skills that it sounds like they're a lot more binary than kind of technology world that I've come from. Since they're a lot more binary, you do this or you don't, and that's it. And then we can talk about the more detail, but you got to at least hit the bar there. And here's what you get if you come in the door. And if that's interesting to you, let's have a deeper conversation. But all that stuff is out of the way. Then it's really about finding that sort of congruence or that fit or that alignment together, right? And that's really where you want to try to find the person behind it all. Is that? I think that's kind of that's what it makes, right?
Great conversation just this morning. HR director from a fantastic company in the Triad of North Carolina, and for her, she uses us because it just identifies, of the, let's just use easy numbers. There's 100 job seekers out there. We're going to quickly identify the 10 that could potentially do the job. But then she fully knows it's still on her and her team to figure out, okay, we're going to bring them in. Now let's go through the culture. Let's go through the hands-on training. At the end of the day, every single manager, business owner, director of HR, what have you, it's still on you. Every company has to take the hiring process way more seriously than we're currently doing it, because it can come back and just destroy your company. One bad hire can, in tech sales, that's what we're talking about. One bad tech sales hire can become a cancer to your culture. And guess what? The same goes for a field service technician that goes out to a house of service. They're a jerk, for lack of better terms. Guess what? They're never calling that pest control company again.
Well, so this is really interesting because when I work with a lot of companies, we're trying to find sort of the effective and the ineffective behaviors of employees in the organization, right? By telling you, this person is really effective, but here's a couple places where you can help train them and shore them up a little bit. And here's the person who's not doing so effective. Here's where you need to lift them up and give them the choice to do that. The problem is lots of times those people at the less effective levels, you haven't set very clear expectations from them probably in the outset.
Yep.
And by you just saying, okay, I'm just going to let it fly under the radar, everyone else kind of sees that and says, hey, why am I being an AA employee and this person is getting paid the same as me? And you're letting them get away with all this crap, right?
Yep.
I don't need to. You're bringing the level down by keeping your denominator lower, right? Yeah. So I think what you're saying here is let's raise the bar as soon as they come in the door, what the expectations are, and as soon as they come in and say, look, this is kind of what we expect for everyone, right? And now you have the ability to raise the tide for all as opposed to lowering it. Yep. Am I saying that right?
No, I'm sure David in the chat can relate to this, but I know in the military, one of the constant issues you hear for why really good senior leaders, military officers leave the service is, hey, regardless of how well I do and how many benchmarks I hit, I'm going to make this much money. And my peer who might not be doing those things is also going to make this much money. And I think when we don't clearly identify what the benchmarks are, and then don't hold people accountable, that's just as detrimental to an organization, regardless of how big you are.
So, I mean, I'd love to hear from David and anyone else, but I mean, it's kind of letting that cancer fester inside, right? And one of the ways to start to cut it out, if you will, is by starting to be more transparent upfront with your hiring process, setting the proper expectations coming in the door, and it actually just leads to potentially even better retention on the backside because they know what they came there for and why.
As a Duke surgeon, I can help with cutting that out.
That's right. That's really interesting. So, I mean, I think I've learned a couple of things here, just kind of going back in terms of blind spots that I've heard throughout the course of this. Number one is you talk to a number of companies where they're just all not on the same page. Before you put that requirement out there for somebody to fill a slot or a role, make sure everyone in that whole chain has actually chimed in before waiting for them to come in the door, right? Next thing I think I heard was this idea of with the salary thing that we were just talking about, is get that stuff up front. So you just kind of get that stuff out of the way. They self-select themselves into the role, as opposed to getting 200 resumes of people saying, I'm just, it's a shotgun effect. I'm going to keep applying to these roles until someone just kind of responds. The general surgeon at Duke. And I think the last one was where we really kind of started on what I'll call it, the checklist, the requirement buckets, right? You got to be able to hit those requirement buckets. And if you state those up front, you kind of just take it all off the table, because when they come in the door and say, I'd like to apply for this role, and you say, but you don't hit these 5 criteria, what conversation are we having here? And it's not about you being a really bad person. It's about you saying, but this is what I need, right? It's a much more objective way to have that conversation before they probably even come into the office.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
What David says, make the same rank exactly, regardless. So I think he's echoing, and I've heard that from many others as well. Tell me more about the future of the company. How are things going? You've got this AI project that you're working on. That sounds pretty exciting.
I'm really excited about the AI, but at the same time, it's like I've seen Terminator. Like, what could we possibly be building over there? Like, this computer is not only going to take my job, it's then going to kill me. Maybe this isn't a great idea. No, but seriously, I think one thing that COVID has shown everybody is that maybe going to online Harvard and spending $70,000 a semester isn't the smartest financial decision one could possibly make. And one thing that I think is, I hate to use this term because of what's happened, but probably one of the biggest silver linings from this is we're about to lose 1/3 of all the skilled workers in America because they're baby boomers. I don't care what, I'm in tech. I still want to be able to drive down I-40, and someone has to maintain that road. We're going to need skilled workers. And one thing that COVID, I think, has really opened people's eyes to is that, 4-year bachelor's degrees with a degree in ancient Roman literature probably isn't the smartest choice. Hey, go to Wake Tech, learn how to weld, leave there with 0 debt, and in a couple of years, you can be making 6 figures. And I really hope that one of the things COVID does is take away this negative stigma that's been attached to the trades for so long, and that us as adults, as parents, as coaches, we stop putting down the trades and encouraging youth and young people to, check out that college, but also check out plumbing, because a plumber lives across the street from me, and he's got a pretty sweet setup at his house.
And I think what you're saying here is by putting some of those things out front as to what you're looking for, it's not a mystery for them as to what they're going to do. You kind of throw it out there already and say, hey, look, I don't know, make $45,000 a year, $80,000 a year, whatever that number is, right? You put it out there up front and say, and then they have a decision to make. Is what I really want to do, go find something else here, or look, there's something here that I know I can get done. I can walk in with the right credentials and capability, and I understand how I can get there.
Yep.
Oh, I can follow that path. So, Rich, I want to tell you what I want to end on. One last note is I myself have a personal project, and I call it the 10 Million Intentions Project. Part of what we're doing as a company is trying to make sure 10 Million Intentions Project is making 10 million people live intentionally in their roles, right? And the idea is that you should be able to go to, which I think aligns with exactly what you're saying here as far as changing the mindset. I'm saying that the trades are a fantastic place for someone to be. We need it, period. Right. Yeah. I think what I like about this, and as part of my 10 million intentions project, is the idea of trying to get people to a place where they can say, I choose my path forward. They love what they do. They go to work because they enjoy what they do. Guess what? The customer benefits, the business benefits, and guess what? They win, right? And I think what I'm hearing here that I really like that aligns with my desire in the 10 million intentions project is you come to the table understanding what you can do when that, with that transparency and with that upfront conversation as to what it is. And I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense. Any thoughts or feedback from you?
No, you're absolutely right. I think too often, especially when it comes to jobs, we get too wrapped around, oh, what's the title? What's the salary? And we're forgetting the intrinsic benefit. Like, there is nothing cooler. Like, I've never worked more in my life as a tech founder, but I've never enjoyed my job more. And I think we're losing that as a greater society too often.
Yeah, to echo on that, living. I mean, it's, Simon Sinek has his famous talk about the why. I mean, that's great, and I think we should all live from our why. But I think what I'm hearing from you and kind of what I'm interested in doing is let's take that why and translate it into what you can do on a daily basis to find the data that helps drive you to a better place, either as a company, as an individual, or as a potential receiver of that as a customer. I think that's a magic place to be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rich. I think I've learned a lot that I didn't know myself. So thanks for sharing some of that with us. Thanks for all the people in the comments here for all of your thoughts and comments. I hope this was a useful session. I think I've heard that from Joseph that this was great. Thanks, Joseph, for the validation on that.
Thanks everybody for having me.
Absolutely, it was a great session.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.